I'm here on YouTube ready to jump in once it's open. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Edwin Robledo. I'm part of the support and tech marketing team, as well as Jorge Garcia. Jorge is going to be actively participating today's presentation, as well as manning the chat as we go along as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Just give it one more minute. We should be ready to go in one more minute. So let's just allow those to log in. And if you're logging in with us, just let us know where you're located. We always like to know where you're at. Just to let you know, Jorge and myself, we're located, both of us, in South Florida. So we're approximately, I don't know, Jorge's like 15 minutes from Miami, north of Miami, and I'm like another 10 minutes away, so like 25 minutes just north of that. Of course, now we're working from home, so makes it quite intriguing. On the chat, just let us know if everything sounds good, if you could hear us. I set this up all we could go, so just give it one more minute. Where are you located? Always like to know where you're located.
We got Egypt, we got Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, excellent. That's where I'm from, just to let you know. Graduated from Polytech University over there in Atorrey. And also want to let you know that Fusion, I'm sorry, Autodesk has extended the trial time into, if I'm not mistaken, May 31st for Fusion 360. So if you're not using it as of yet, you do have time, and you could use it until May 31st on a trial basis. So it will have all the capabilities of it as well. So they're extending the whole month trial period as well. They're continue doing it as well.
Ed, you still there? Ed? Ed?
Yes.
Ed Tahai?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Your audio dropped out a couple of times.
I'm going to go ahead and let you drive this demo. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I notice my internet is going in and out, Jorge. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go ahead and stop, and I'll go and jump on the chat.
Okay, cool.
Because I'm noticing my internet is going in and out, and that's why I lost audio.
Sounds
okay, good. So we could go ahead and begin, okay, Jorge? So let me stop the share. That way you could share your screen.
Cool. Alrighty. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Hopefully you can see my screen. You should be looking at a schematic here on Autodesk Fusion 360. Ed, can you see it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, excellent. So what we want to talk about today are these three panels here, okay? Design Manager, Inspector, and Selection Filter. Now, before you look at them and say, oh, this is taking up a lot of space, there's a lot of useful functionality here, and it's worth having them open. Now, in Eagle, they can all tab into each other, which makes them take up less space. Currently, that's not possible in Fusion 360, but it is something that's being worked on to make sure that we can have that same experience, and that way you get that space back. But for now, this is how they look, and you can obviously locate them in different places and all that. But let's go ahead and go and analyze the different functionality. Now, Inspector is kind of the way to look into the properties of a component or a group of components. If you have a single component that you select, you'll see that it shows you all of its properties. Name, its position, everything is here. Now, if you notice, I rotated my mouse wheel over the angle button, and it changed it. Okay? So what you can do here is any of these parameters is editable, and you can make changes and you can adjust them. So for example, from here you can move things. For example, I can move it over to the left a little bit. Okay.
Sounds like a fine tuning type of tool you could use it as.
It's very useful in that function. As you saw, we can do angles, we can change. Well, another thing that's hard to see in this configuration, if you go down, you'll notice that you have quick actions that you can do on the selected item. So you can like change its value, define attributes for it. You can do a replacement. You also see that you have attributes. So you can modify those here as well as add new ones. Now this is good as it is just for a single component, but what happens if we have multiple components? So let's say we have this one, whoops. We have this one selected and we now add this one to the selection. You'll notice that now the field changes. Now it will only show you the properties that they have in common. So if you notice, they do have their y coordinate in common. So you can see that here. Their angle's the same. But that's it. You'll also notice that it gives you a list of selected objects. You can do a sublist by just left-clicking and dragging to select a subgroup. And then you'll also see again the options that you can do. Now, when you have it set up as a group like this, any adjustments you make here will affect all the members of the group. So if I go ahead and make this a 4 now and hit enter, you'll notice they both moved up. Okay? So conceptually, it's very simple, but the more you use it, the more different uses you'll find for it. It's very powerful. Now, a lot of the functionality contained in the inspector is available through individual commands. But if you're new to Fusion Electronics, you can get a lot of the modifications you want to get done through here, through the inspector. So it helps lessen the learning curve. Okay? So those are the two key uses of the inspector. You either act on a single device or you can act on a group of elements. It doesn't have to be a device, sorry. On a group of elements. When you pick a group, it'll show you what properties they have in common. So if you look, if I pick, let's say these nets here, you'll see again, here are the nets. Here's the properties that they have in common. Their width. You can form a subgroup. So if I only want to do something to Y0 and Y2, I can do something like that and then perform an action on those. You notice you can right click. Oh no, that's in the design manager. So you can form a subgroup and then make modifications using these commands, using change, so there's a lot of power here. Now let's move on to the inspector. I'm sorry, the selection filter. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. Now in the selection filter, what you're going to notice is that you have the different types of objects that you can select. And on the 2D PCB, you'll have this selection plus the layers. And what this does is it allows you to really, really easily control your selection. So let's say, for example, I only wanted to get buses, okay? Well, if I wanted to do it with everything active like this, I would have to be careful and make sure I just select buses. So I'm holding control. I have to click each one individually. And that works. And I selected them. And if I check in the inspector, I've got my buses. But if you use the filter, you can get this done much easier. So I'll just say I only want bus wires. I make a big selection. And then the only thing that gets selected are bus wires. And we can confirm that in the inspector. Okay, so obviously this is a very simple kind of example design, but you can imagine that on a very dense design, especially on a dense PCB, this is very helpful because it avoids you having to be very perfect and very exact with your selection of items. You can just specify, okay, I only want these items, draw a big rectangle, and then you know those will only be the objects included in the selection. So that's what the selection filter does. If you ever find, and this happens sometimes, where users then, after they do something like this, they try to select something else, like, why can't I grab it? It's because everything else is disabled. So you have to hit the reset button here. Now you can go ahead and make your selection, and it's back to normal. So it's very powerful, especially on the PCB where you can have multiple routing layers. Being able to filter not only by type of object, but also by the layer that object is on is extremely powerful. So if you only want to select the components that are on the top, you pick part and then make sure that only top layer is selected. And it makes it very easy to do these granular selections. Now the design manager is kind of in a similar way useful. It can help you make very specific selections, but the selections you define here aren't based on object type or on the layer they're on. Here you can be even more specific. You can, for example, just get, ICs. So instead of saying all the components, I only want ICs. I only want resistors. I only want, so you have that ability here. And if you pick an item, you're going to notice that it selects it and then it breaks it down for you. So you'll see everything that's all the constituent parts of that component. So what I'm going to do, just to show you kind of where this can be used more, is I'm going to make a 2D PCB. Okay, I'm just going to grab these and take this over. Okay, and you can see what I mentioned here about the selection filter being different. So you can filter by type of item and by layer. And you can have some presets here. That way it only specify things that maybe are on the top, maybe things are on the bottom, or in the standard layer configuration. Okay, so now if we look here, if I pick this DIL 16, here it actually breaks it down. So if you ever want to know what the dimensions of a pad are, things like that, you just look here and it'll tell you. Size, there's a drill, so this is diameter, drill value, the location of it. If I move it around, these numbers change, so it lets you know where the exact pad centers are, which can be useful, especially if you're like verifying a footprint. You can from here lock a component. You can choose to have it locked. You can do a few other things from here as well. Now, right now, it's just showing us devices, but let's look at signals. So here you can organize them by net class. You have your list of signals. So let's say I only want to route the Y signals. Okay, I go ahead and select them. And you'll see that they show up over here. And now if I right click, you'll see that I have the option to rip up if they were ripped up, to quick route them, or to fan them out. I'm going to left click quick route. And you'll see that it actually tries to route them for me. So it's a handy function from here. Obviously I can right click again and just rip them all. So that's one of the big things that the design manager can help you do. It can help you extract information from the design that wouldn't otherwise be accessible. So again, like here, we can have the different lengths of traces, we can get the number of segments, all of that can be obtained. So if I go ahead and route it again, if you look here, you'll see that we have traces and we can see their lengths. So you can confirm that. If you need to do like an impedance calculation, you can see their size, angles, lots of powerful information here. And groups. Groups is basically the persistent groups functionality. And by default, it will be empty because you don't by default have any groups defined. But if you do make a persistent group in the board or in the schematic, you can analyze its properties through here. Now, this is actually going to be a little bit easier to show on the schematic. So I'm going to go over here. Okay, and I'm going to form a group of basically just all of this circuitry here. You right click and you'll have the option new group. You're going to give it a name. It's going to be selectable. And I'll say 2 gates. Okay. Now all of this can move as a unit and it can be selected as a unit. So if I go ahead and left click, I've got that specific component. If I left click here at the title, I now move everything together. Okay, so this is really good for breaking down your design into manageable blocks. Now, if we go over here to the design manager, we go to groups, we'll see that we have our 2 groups. And what you can do is, our 1 group and then everything else. And you'll see what you can do is you can see everything that's part of a group. All of these components are part of a group. Now you can obviously make a new group. You can remove them from a group. So you can, as you go make your design, you can organize it into these blocks. You can also have a group that consists of some nets and another group. So they are hierarchical. They can build one on top of the other. And when you do this, you can keep everything kind of stuck together. Everything kind of moves as a block. So there's a lot of power there as well, especially on maybe like memory designs, things where you have a lot of repeating circuit blocks. That's an area where persistent groups can make life very easy for you. The other benefit here is that if this is an area of the circuit that you're constantly maybe moving around or making changes to, you no longer have to constantly be making the group. It's already been made. It's there. It's permanent. So you can just go and edit it and make changes to it. Now, the last key part of the design manager is filter. Okay. Now, filter is very interesting. Takes a little bit of time to wrap your head around it, but filter is again the next logical level of the design manager. So it basically allows you to build up a query for components, and then it can run on your design. And what's nice about the filter is that it does update dynamically. So for example, I've made this persistent group right now, right? I can then add to the design, but unless I manually come and add something to this group, it doesn't grow automatically. Okay, but for example, let's look here. I'm going to say part, and I'm going to say whose name IC asterisk. Okay, so now I have these 2 ICs, right? Broken it down. But now if I go ahead and add in a new IC, just going to grab something in. Okay, so now I have IC3, IC4. If I hit apply, you'll see that it's grown. Okay, so this can allow you to make specific selections that are dynamic, that will grow as the design grows. So if you want to look for all of the components that have an SO8 package, you can do that. If you want to look for all your resistors that have a value of 100K, you can do that. And then select them and then go to the inspector and make changes to that group. So as you can see, there's a lot of power here because you can specify any type of criteria. So you can, as you can see here, you can filter based on value. If it's in already an existing filter. So that's another thing that you can do here. You can save these. You can save it as a filter in the design and then recall it at any point in time. So if you want to look, for example, for components that don't have a 3D model, that can be done because you can look here, has 3D model. You can look for a certain attribute, footprint, etc. So there's a lot of powerful things here. So if I say, for example, has 3D model, I can say not, and it will show me the components that don't have 3D models. So there's a lot that you can do here. And it really is worth the time to figure out how to set it up. As you can see, it's really just setting up a query. At the top, you start what you're looking for. I'm looking for a part. Well, maybe I'm looking for a line. I'm looking for something else. And then adjust. See? Object type, line, whose length is something. I can say less than, let's say 2 millimeters.
I was going to say 5 millimeters, but 2 millimeters works.
Yeah. I mean, technically there's no lines here. What I have are nets. So
Yeah.
if I look, let me see. Would it find lines?
You just pass right underneath labels line. Right there.
Line, yeah, it would be line. Okay. So object type, length, less that, and then I'll get rid of this one. I don't know if I have anything here that would be
I think,
considered.
I think it's too short there. I think you have right now.
Oh, that's why. Greater than. See, but I think I'm looking at the wrong thing because this is a wire. Does wire show up here? Yes, wire. There we go.
Oh, it was a matter of getting the right object name.
Yeah, object type, wire. And length greater than 2 millimeters, which they should all be greater than 2 millimeters. Unless maybe this filter is set up a little weird. Well, we can check that out later.
Mm-hmm.
You can see if it's on sheet 1, for example. Not on sheet 1 because I made something in sheet 2. So there I found it. So you can see there's a lot of power here for making selections, for organizing your design. If you look at one of the examples that used to be included in Eagle, which was, that's not included in Fusion, but is included in Eagle, is the Beagle Bone. And that one actually comes with a few filters for finding, for example, components that don't have 3D models, for finding components that are not ready for simulation, for finding resistors of a certain size and value. And all of that you can store in the design. So we can call this, let me make a nicer filter because this one, find a group, I can find part, and then name IC, and I'll save it in the design as integrated circuits. Okay, I do that, and now you'll see I've saved that filter. So I can always come back to it. No matter what I do, I can always restore that filter and make changes to it. So I'll say none right now. I'll make some other one. Okay, something like that. And then I can always go back and say integrated circuits and find it as needed. Okay, so that's basically how these three panels work. Okay, and what they can be used for. Now, one thing that I like to do with them, for example, is I'll grab these two in the selection. Then you can go ahead and say replace. You can just replace them with something else immediately. So things like that are very easy to do now. You take all your resistors, you find the ones that have, a certain value and you need them to change, or you need the footprint to be different. You can just use the replace command for those. So really makes these big sweeping changes very easy to do. Do we have any questions, Ed? Anything that's standing out?
No, not right now, Jorge. I don't see any questions, but I was wondering if you there was just one scenario I like to go ahead and share with everybody that's participating. I was wondering if you'd let me just go ahead and share my screen quickly.
Do it.
Thanks, George. Appreciate that. Awesome. I just wanted to bring in a few more examples aligned with what you're already working with. So let me know if you could see my screen, Jorge.
Yes, you have the beagle bone.
I was kind of preparing for this today. I prepared for it kind of last night, and for some reason my internet was not working as well as I would like to. But I just had a few more points I want to add. I don't want to extend this too long. But there was just a few points that I want to bring along. So first of all, as you could see, Jorge already mentioned that you could do by signals of devices, but there's these two little icons here on the top that I just want to bring them to your attention right here. I don't know if you could see them right there and right over here. So what this means is, let's say if I want the component to be selected when I select it here in the design manager, that's what this one is. So if it's not highlighted, it kind of like looks for it, but it doesn't select it, as you could see there. It kind of like finds it, as you see it right there, but it's not being selected. Well, if I do have this option selected, and then you'll see that it actually picks out that part. As you can see there, it's actually selecting it, okay?
Yeah, I never have that option turned off. I've never had a good reason to keep it on.
Me either. Me either. I always have it turned on as well. Also, this little lens here that we have here is for it to zoom in on it. If I don't have that option selected, it will just kind of highlight it, but it doesn't necessarily zoom in on it. On a dense board like this, I don't know why would you use it, but the option is actually there. And so as you could see, it kind of highlights it. As you could see it there, it's kind of highlighting the part right over here. But it's not actually selecting that part. It's actually selecting the part, but it's not zooming in on it. So if I have this option selected, now it starts zooming in on it.
Yep.
Then
Again,
one more. Exactly. Now, the last example I wanted to cover was, let's say, for example, I define a group here, and I select all these components that I have here. You'll notice that it's highlighting components on the top, components on the bottom, and all my signals. But let's say I want to fine tune this because I only want to select these components on, these are capacitors, these caps that are on the bottom. So I could go over here, I'll hit escape just to kind of like refresh my selection. I will select here devices only on the bottom layer. Now, if I go ahead and I create this definition again, you'll notice that the only ones that actually highlight are those components on the bottom. If I go here where the inspector is, I could see that the inspector gives me all the information in regards of the component. I'll scroll over here, as you could see. It's a resistor. It tells me some information on the resistor. And on the bottom of the inspector, I get some information. Let's say I wanted to replace one of these. I'm just going to replace one of them, or I could replace all four of them. So I'll click on replace. So let's say, for example, you use a particular size of LED and you want to use a wholly, totally different size, just because that's what you have in stock, or that's what DigiKey has available, or Jameco, Mauser, whoever your preferred distributor is. Then you could actually select it and use this replace option. And I could go here and find a different a capacitor that I wish to use. So I don't know, I'll just select from here, from this list of capacitors that we have here, 0805. It's going to look really weird because these are much bigger than the ones that are there, but I just want to show you the capability that there is. So I'll click OK, and as you could see,
it squashes everything.
It changed them all. But you see, the reason I want to show this is I did this in 2 clicks. I didn't have to go to each component one at a time. Okay, so I just wanted to show you the capability that I could actually switch all these parts just basically with 2 clicks. In the past, I would have to go individually, and that's it. That's all I really wanted to cover in today's webinar, Jorge. I don't know, is there any other aspect that we miss? Other than these capabilities, these panels exist on the schematic on the board as well as in the library. So if we were creating a footprint, you could fine tune the component placement by having the inspector windows enabled as well. I think I have them
You have
off
them
to the
hidden.
side here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have them hidden here, so I gotta bring them over. Oh man, sorry. I had them here just a minute ago preparing for this demo.
Just resize it. Pull it over to the left a little bit. You'll be okay. And then, right. Okay. Somewhere on that edge, you should be able to. If not, check in the view menu. You should be able. Oh, there
Here
you go.
they
Got
are. Oh, golly. They went away again. Okay, here we go. So here we go. Here they are. So let's say, for example, in the library, this is primarily for the footprint and on the schematic symbol. If you select your pads that I have here, then I could, as Jorge mentioned earlier, I could fine tune their placement. And there's some other properties I could change. Like I could change the drill hole size. I could change their shape as well. Or I could do it individually, or I could define a group and do them all as a group as well if you want to. As you can see, they're here. And now I could actually change their shape of all of them to an octagon. The diameter, I'm just using automatically calculated, 90 degrees. It doesn't really matter here. I could lock them. I could tell it to have stop or not have stop. That way they're tented or they're not tented. So these capabilities are available for you in the library editor as well for packages and symbol as well. And that's all I wanted to cover today, Jorge. I don't know if I miss anything. I think we're good here.
I think we're good. I think we've covered it. Just a note: the properties that show up in the inspector obviously vary depending on the object you pick. So if you pick something like a pad, you're not going to have the same properties as, say, a trace. As well, the quick actions will adjust depending on what's in the group and how it's filtered down.
You even have alignment capabilities, how to distribute them. So you could really leverage. I know that every time you open up Fusion 360 and load an electronic board or schematic, these panels just take they're overwhelming because they take so much space of your drawing space, but they're actually very, very useful. Just what Jorge said, a lot of times when I'm running demos, I kind of shut them off, but they're very, very useful to have them available. Well, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any questions, please join us on the forum. Just look them up on Fusion 360 Electronics Forum, where Jorge, Richard, or myself, or part of our development team are continuously participating. It's been a pleasure. Everybody have a great day, and make sure you stay safe. And Jorge, thank you for a phenomenal job, as always. Greatly appreciate it. And have a great time, and stay safe, please.
Bye, everyone. Take care.